This is the Land&Legacy podcast. I'm your host, Adam Keith.
And then Matt Dye.
And Zach Shermer.
There you go. I was wondering if you just catch on to the little trend we had going there.
Well, last time you introduced me the last two times, and one
That's
time
right.
you said my name incorrectly.
We've said it.
On purpose.
Zachary Skirmer. Twice now.
Twice.
So anyway, Zach is joining us again on this week's podcast, Habitat-focused podcast right here on Sportsman's Nation. This week's podcast brought to you by RTP Outdoors, makers of the Genesis no-till drill, Goliath crimper, the Groundbreaker, and all sorts of other wonderful things for food plot implements. If you want to learn more, check them out online or Facebook, RTP Outdoors. All right, we have a very fun-filled podcast. You guys are just sitting over there frowning on me. But fun-filled podcast for you as we kick off the very first QDMA module recap. And then we have a whole long list of would you rathers that listeners have been sending in over the last 24 hours.
I just kind of thought this when you were talking about it. You know how our church, they do like the summer sizzling series where like the pastor, they kind of go on break. Yeah. They bring in a bunch of guests. It's kind of what this is. It's kind of a little different spin, but we're cranking up the fun on it and trying to get some interaction from Facebook and Instagram on viewers' questions and the would you rathers. And it's going to be off the cuff, and we're just going to roll with it and see what our answers, how they fall, how they lie, and probably have some good discussions with some of the questions that have come through.
Yes.
I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be cool.
It'll be a lot of fun. But before we do that, we've got to go through our QDMA Module 1, Aging Deer on the Hoof.
So if this is sounding new to you, for the next 9 weeks, we are going through each online module that QDMA has produced. This first one, Aging Deer on the Hoof, is week number 1. Adam and I have been working through it during the past week and going through that course material, articles, videos, and learning about it just like you guys are, hopefully. If you need to sign up and have not yet signed up, go to www.qdma.com/land&legacy, and that will take you to a special coupon, 20% off for the online modules. And again, we're going through Aging Deer on the Hoof. If you missed this week, you can go back on your own time and go through that. But man, that was a fun little course.
It was for sure. And just so we're clear, the coupon covers,
that's what Granny says, the coupon.
It's 20% off, so that takes the price down to
$79.
$79.
Yep.
$79
for all 8 of them.
For all 8 of the modules that cover a wide variety of things. This week is Aging Deer on the Hoof. It was very interesting for me because it covered a lot of different things about aging deer, not just trail cam picture, there's a deer on the hoof, or he walks by a stand, but how to age him after you made the harvest by looking at teeth. And so it was really, it was interesting, even for me. I mean, I've seen a lot of this stuff over the years, but putting it all together and it's just one spot to look through it all, there was a lot to learn.
Well, I think that's the value of the module itself. Like, QDMA has got so many articles and publications and videos and stuff that they do, and these modules, put them all together, and it's like, kind of an intense, like, let's learn about aging deer, and you don't have to go through a bunch of different other articles and fluff. Like, this is the straight up information. So this is the perfect time of year, and it just kind of correlated. This is number 1 on the list, but we're getting into the middle of June, late June, and deer starting to really show up on cameras, and everyone is talking about, who's showing up, age this buck. So these skills that hopefully you learned or will learn this week, following along this podcast, is going to get you ready for the summer and get you building hit list and or maybe just watching some up-and-comers throughout the summer.
Are you guys going to dig into it? Is that what you're going to talk about?
He's just waiting to give you the information.
Matt's all about diving into it.
Oh, gosh. Oh, I said digging in.
You said digging into it. Is that a tip
jar one, too?
Yeah. No, not yet, but it will be, I'm sure.
Well, I was just curious.
Yeah. No, Matt's ready to dive on in, I guess.
Dive on in, Matt.
All right. So one of the biggest things I think that I took away from this week, and specifically on the fact of aging deer, like on the hoof, as in pictures, we're talking trail camera images that you get, is cover up the antlers. Like, that's such the simplest thing to do when you're talking about aging deer on the hoof, because each region each age class, you can make generalizations, and I think that generalization is what you make plays, whether you're consciously thinking about it or not, plays into a part of your end decision when you're aging deer on the hoof, if that makes sense. So when you get the picture of a deer, immediately cover up the antlers and just look at the body. They walk you through what you need to know, the body characteristics to identify. You see the poster back behind us, like that's a good snapshot, but they walk you through it. But
yes,
don't let those
yes,
antlers.
Zach, there's a poster back there.
Don't let those antlers, excuse me, kind of cloud your judgment or distract you from looking at the features you really need to look at. You know?
I think that's where we can say too, if searching for a deer of a certain age class is what you don't enjoy about hunting, then looking for the age of a deer maybe isn't for you. But if and so many of us are very curious on the age class or of the age of a deer, not even just a target deer, but a nice up-and-comer saying, how old is that deer? This is a great opportunity to learn and educate yourself on how to do that. I think there was a couple times in there where I'm like, that's a really good analogy. I like that. It makes you really think about it. And there's the whole first part was talking about all the different age classes of deer and the characteristics of each one of those. And one that came to me was, I think 2.5-year-old buck. It's now starting to get that difference between looking like a doe as a yearling to looking more like a buck, but his legs are still long, so it's almost like a guy putting on a pair of high heels. He's got long legs and he looks uncoordinated. That's what I was thinking. I was like, yeah, that to me, 2.5-year-old is a buck in high heels. He's got long legs and
look at
he
his
looks
pants.
awkward. Yeah, that's right. So anyway,
Strutting
but
that
no,
stuff.
it was a great little module, and I learned a lot.
One of the other things that I think that was really neat that I had never seen anyone do before, in the module, they had a trail camera location, and they had a mature buck that had come through right there perfectly broadside. And then after that, a couple camera pictures later, they had a younger buck come and stand in almost the exact same position. And what they did was take the buck, the mature buck that they knew was mature, I think they said he might have been 5.5, and then they've removed him from the photo but kept his outline. And what that did was allow the younger buck to stand almost within his outline, and you could clearly see the differences in body posture, position, and the key features that you're looking at. I mean, it pretty much just screamed off the screen at you, but it's like, wow, that's so much clearer when you're able to look at the outline compared to the actual body of that younger deer. So if you have the ability to do that on your own property, use that as a tool. Put them kind of, if you will, side by side or over top of one another and look at the differences.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I thought of one term that I see people get mixed up a lot is he gave the definitions of fawns and yearlings. How often do you hear a button buck or something come out of food plot and someone's like, yeah, there's a yearling out there, and it's like, it's not the same.
Yep.
And I
that
thought
deer
of that
is 6 months old.
Yeah, and so there's a clear difference between a fawn and a yearling, and they explain the differences in physical characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I liked was the judging a fawn or finding out if it's a fawn or not based on the head, and that its eyeball is the same distance to its ear as it is the end of its nose.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of really cool scenarios that are easy to use in the field. Once you put those in the old memory bank and you're in a tree stand, you say, okay, that deer has that characteristic, I know that it's this old. And then they walk you through the process of, once you harvest that animal, how do you confirm everything that you gained and thought you knew about that deer, and once you pull that jawbone, how you can confirm that age.
Yeah.
So
one of the were you?
I was just wondering, what is the number one thing you're looking for right now on trail camera pictures to tell if it's a mature buck, like mid-June into July?
There's a lot of things, and that's where it goes into. There's not one certain thing that you look at every single time because each deer is different. So even an older age buck may show a little bit different characteristics. So we're looking at 5 or 6 different characteristics to really try to decide the age of the buck. So it could be, we can't just say, I want to look at the neck
Yeah.
and say, okay, if his neck's that big, then I know he's that old. But you can get a younger buck who really gets swollen up, and you're like, well, he's got a huge neck. He must be old. But it's just that characteristic of that deer. He carries his frame a little differently.
Honestly, the neck at this time of the year, summer, is very misleading. I mean, because they have their summer coats on, they're not full. But things that I would look at specifically is the depth of that chest and the belly that they have on. So what do those legs look like? Are they long? Or are they short? And that's going to tell me off the top of my head, like right then and there, looking at that trail camera, how old is he?
Yeah.
I look at legs and gut a lot.
Yeah, I look at gut. That's what I was going to say. And I was wondering, this time of year, a lot of deer are probably pretty thin, right? I mean, I know there's a lot of food, but it's hot. Like you said, there's no winter coat.
Summer coats,
or summer coat, sorry.
They're lean.
Yeah, they're lean. So it's like, you see a buck in the fall, even if you don't see the antlers, you just, a mature buck, you're like, okay, that's different than all the other ones. His barrel chest. So I was just curious.
And on the flip
this
side
type of summer, what they look like.
Yeah, and it really individual health. There's a deer that could be fully mature, but he had a rougher spring. Let's say he dealt with an internal injury that we can't see on the outside, that's and true. So he looks even scrawnier. And we're like, oh, he's just a 3-year-old. But then a couple months from now, he gets over that and he really swells up. And you're like, man, I think he's older now. That's why it's important to really think about and try to find images and get images of those deer throughout the growing season, throughout summer, then even throughout the hunting season. But then also educate yourself on when you see them in person. So if they do come by, you can study them and make those in the field ideas. And that's what it's all about. And they give plenty of ideas and ways to age a deer, estimate the age of a deer, both through trail cameras and field observations, and then once you harvest them, hopefully.
Without digging in too deep and all that, I feel like one of the biggest things on aging a deer for me personally has a lot to do with just pure experience in the field, right? Mm-hmm. The more deer you see, the more you're going to notice ones that are different than the others.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
For sure.
I remember, first hunting, I'd see a 2.5-year-old coming up, and my heart would drop, and I'd be like, this is the biggest buck I've ever seen. But I hadn't seen a lot of deer then, So the more years you spend in the stand, the more times you go out there and hunt, and you see a lot more deer, and you see mature deer, you're like, oh, well, that guy looks a lot different than that other buck that just walked by.
Exactly. Like like you said, the area, the neighborhood that you're in, the age structure that you're exposed to in those infield observations is very telling of your ability to accurately estimate deer on the hoof in the field. Mm-hmm. Because if you're not predisposed to seeing 3.5-year-old deer and distinguishing them between a 4.5 and older deer, that first 3.5-year-old that walks out, like you said, your heart's gonna start racing, which is awesome. But it could lead you to believe that he's 4.5 or older. You just don't have those observations. So again, what you're exposed to in your area can influence that a little bit.
Yeah. And trail cameras have just changed the game on that too. I mean, just all the intel you can gather. But anyways.
Well, absolutely. And I think when you look at aging deer, I think that goes hand in hand with, like you said, the more you can look at, the better off you are. And QDMA has a thing, age this in each one of their magazines. Mm-hmm. And it's a great thing because there's 5 guys, 5 well-educated biologists who have been doing this a long time. And you'll notice that each catalog or each magazine, a couple of them think differently than the others. But they always go off the average, so there's always going to be generally 3 guys that always are on the same page. And then and you just don't know. I mean, you can get it pretty doggone close, but that's why it's so important to follow up if you do harvest that animal, to pull the jawbone and confirm how old he was. And then that helps you get a better idea of the deer in your neighborhood and what they look like. Because, Matt, I'll ask you this. What was one of your favorite things about that module?
One of my favorite things was actually when you're looking at tooth wear replacement and that ability for you to more accurately estimate the age of deer. This is post-harvest, obviously, when you can pull the jawbone and examine that. And I think that pulling a jawbone and examining that way and determining age has always been kind of one of those, if you will, the topics in school, like math or long division. When you're in fourth grade, you're like, oh, you just kind of dread it. You're not looking forward to learning it, because it typically is. It's not as easy or accessible as looking at a lot of trail camera images. But in the module, there's 2 videos. They're 6 minutes apiece, and the way it's broken down, in the first video, within 6 minutes, you can easily and determine, okay, is it a fawn? Is it a 1.5 years or 2.5 and older? Like, there's 3 simple rules right there. It's so stinking easy for you to look at a jaw. Within seconds, you're able to accurately make that age estimation.
Mm-hmm. I think one of my favorite things was the 7 sins of aging deer on the hoof, just because we see it so much, and there was all kinds of different things, but 7 sins for aging deer on the hoof, and the things to not do when you're trying to age deer on the hoof. And to me, there's so much that all of us can learn from that on when it comes to looking at images or trying to figure out the age of bucks. What did you find interesting?
Interesting.
I mean, it was all interesting,
yeah.
but what were you like, I didn't think about that, or it was like, wow, that was really cool. I like that explanation.
Honestly, what I thought most interesting was what I mentioned earlier about the outline of that mature deer, and then that younger buck kind of placed over top of it. I never thought about doing that, but I mean, it was a great visual representation of the 2 body differences. I
think mine was the tooth aging videos and the explanation of a mountain, a new mountain, and pointing, and basically dentine versus enamel, and the erosion of that, and seeing more of the rounded off deep dentine, brown dentine in the teeth, and what that means on aging deer. It was a really good module. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait for the next one. Yeah, takeaways, no matter if you're in the field or you've already harvested deer, you're going to be able to accurately age that deer when you're done going through this module. Take it at your own pace. I mean, it's laid out super easy. Yeah. Check it out, QDMA.com/land&legacy. You can get a 20% discount and join us for the next week as we discuss the next topic. Do you know what the next topic is? I forget what it is.
Nope.
I can't remember, but I know it's going to be a good one. Yep, it sure will be.
Hey, before we move on, could I kind of bring something up?
Yeah.
So that buck my dad killed late season last year, I believe, I just texted him, I believe he was 6.5.
Wow.
Right?
That's fantastic.
That was he had his jaw sent in and tested. And I was just curious because I had read some things and watched some other YouTube videos about it, but when the deer kind of gets to that age, do they kind of act dumb again, right? They kind of have a smaller range.
Can be
a little bit. I mean, well,
typically
this buck did, at least, because we had pictures of him for, like a week in a row. He was going out in daylight and picking up the rest of the beans we had in that field. Yeah, and it's like, what is he doing? You know, we don't really have a lot of bucks that act like that because of pressure and the rut, whatever. But yeah, I was just curious. He acted like an unmature buck. Yeah, typically the home range does shrink and get smaller. The studies have seen that in older age class bucks. Individual movements like that can, what they're doing can be based on an individual themselves. But to me, as hearing that as a mature deer, and 6.5, you don't hear about that much, but that's just because of hunting pressure, I think. Yeah. When think of like deer getting super old and becoming really just, weird patterns like 8 and 9, like that's where I feel like I can see that. Honestly, that could be a testament to the way you guys were hunting, and maybe the proximity of good bedding cover to that food source. He felt comfortable. He felt safe enough to move like that in daylight. Yeah, we had stayed out of that field for a while. There was he didn't sense pressure.
When did he kill that deer?
Muzzleloader.
So it could have been also a product of late season food and.
Yeah, we had we saw a lot of deer. I'm sure that has a lot to do with it, but I just.
He was really worn down from the rut and just had to get forage.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. And we have pictures of him all over the place, our farm. During the rut, we had him in multiple different positions. Our neighbor had him on his land too. Everyone in our area, this was a hit list buck. Wow. This was the guy to kill, and luckily my dad got him. But So I guess 6.5 isn't super old, you know.
I mean, it's a great caliber
for
of deer, no doubt.
Yeah, for our situation, that's I mean, they don't really live that long. But anyway.
Would I second guess it? 6.5? Heck no. Heck no. No questions asked. But his behavior probably was related to that late season, and it was cold during those later seasons.
It was bad.
I mean, teens as a high and stiff winds. I remember that.
Down in Arkansas one morning, I think it was 6 degrees, wind chill, like -5-ish, somewhere in there.
Which is not...
Dude, it was brutal.
Not our typical winter.
Nope.
Especially in December. So, well, this week after going through the module there, we've got that special little, I don't know, podcast episode of Would You Rathers. This has been kind of that new feature we've added recently to the podcast, I guess 20 plus or so episodes back. But just kind of to throw in that lighthearted, fun, interesting, what would you do in this situation? It's kind of that off-the-cuff feel to things. So we went live before we recorded and had gotten some other interaction with some social media followers, and they had sent in some Would You Rathers. And we're just going to go through them and see what the answers are, see what us, what we think, and we're going to have some views I'm sure that we disagree on, but from there we'll just rock and roll. Adam, you got the first one?
I guess this one's kind of makes you really think.
Oh yeah,
Mr. Dominic, and I think he's the guy that listened to last week's podcast and really opened up some good discussion.
Oh yes,
things
yeah.
on
Out of
our,
Manassas, Virginia.
From
What's up,
our
Dominic?
CWD. He asked, would you rather own 10 acres where you have complete control over everything, or you have sole permission to hunt 75 acres but very little ability to make any habitat improvements?
Wow.
That's
laying it out there, Dominic. How about that?
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, 75 acres, you've got several different hunting locations. You've got ways you can hunt different winds, and that would be my biggest complaint about small acreage, especially 10 acres, is you really only have a few winds you can hunt on. 75 acres, you can tweak around and find ways. And so that comes down to the question, really, of would you rather be able to do habitat management, or would you rather have better hunting?
Yeah. If knowing Northern Virginia, and if he is talking specifically about Northern Virginia, I'm going with 75 acres. There's deer everywhere there. You're going to be able to be successful and have a target-rich environment. But, I'd like to hunt. So I'd like to have those options of, okay, it's a west wind or tomorrow's a north wind. I can still hunt both days. I just got to be particular about the way I do access this farm. 10 acres is plenty in some areas, and if it's the right 10 acres, you can be successful every single year, but access just tends to be tough.
But on paper,
yes,
saying 10 acres versus 75 acres, and the only difference is sole hunting rights or complete control, I would also agree. I'd take the 75 acres. But if you were to ask me 75 acres, sole hunting control, but 20 acres with complete control and able to do habitat management, and I saw the area, there's a chance I'd still say I'd rather have the 20 acres. But in this question, I'll say 75 acres.
I'm going against you guys. Give me the 10, go hunt some public. Make that, there's thousands of acres of public. Make that 10 acres, bedding central, hunt it in the rut, and then go hunt public the rest
There
of
you
the
go.
That was a great response.
Yeah.
Told you we'd disagree. Who invited this guy?
Yeah. So anyway, that's I don't think you go wrong with either one. You could take the 10 acres and turn it into a fantastic 10 acres, but I would feel like you'd still be handcuffed on some of your wind.
Yes.
And so if you have the ability to hunt public ground, so when you do get the right wind, you can jump in there. But if you don't have the right wind, you can go hunt some public ground or hunt somewhere else. That would be the biggest question. But that's a really good one there.
No doubt.
You want the next one?
Oh, we got a couple from Mr. Justin Adams of Pure Air Natives. It says, if you could only plant one with no other food plots on the property, would you rather plant 10 acres nutritional summer food plot or 1.5 to 2 acre kill plots? Soybeans are not allowed because they could be both. So 10 acres nutritional summer plot or 1.5 to 2 acre kill plots.
And that's on any size property, I guess.
That's a good one, you know? I mean, I'm going to personally go with kill plots. I'm going kill plots for...
It's only one plot, though. It's only one kill plot. It's one
or
and a half.
kill plot.
Yeah. Keyword, letter A in there. So you only
did Justin put that in there?
He did, yeah. I just saw him edit it in
there.
Edited,
yeah.
10-acre nutritional summer plot.
Darn
or
you,
a
Justin.
1.5 acre or 2 acre kill plot. Now, 10 acres is going to cost some money to plant that entire area in a food plot. And chances are, if you own 10 acres, it's a 10-acre field, you're going to be trying to think of a way to make money off of it rather than spend money on it. Yeah, man.
You know what? I'm still going to go 2-acre kill plot, which I don't think 2 acres I wouldn't classify that as a kill plot necessarily, but if I'd go with I'm going with the kill plot because of the other type of management that I would want to be doing on the property.
Yeah, you shouldn't need food anyway.
Exactly.
You shouldn't need any food plots, I should say. They should
Right.
have enough habitat, enough food in the native browse to where you don't have to you don't need a food plot to...
Exactly.
But if you're in somewhere in, like, let's say northern Michigan or something, it's like, ooh, having 10 acres of food would be key.
Would be good.
I could own a lot of deer during the winter months, so...
I mean, again, there's a loaded question. There's details I would like to know, but knowing if I had my choice of management types, I'd be having a lot of early successional summertime browse. I'm going to go with the kill plot to be successful so I can reap the rewards of all that habitat work hopefully I'm doing.
2-acre kill plot. That's funny. That's our biggest field on our farm, so I'm going the 2-acre kill plot.
That
feeds a lot of deer.
I'd probably say the same thing. 2-acre kill plot and have all kinds of diversity in there, so there's all kinds of food. And 10 acres, that's going to cost quite a bit of money.
That's a big area.
Plus,
can be tough to hunt.
I may have to sleep a few nights in the doghouse if I'm justifying a 10 acres of seed and everything like that. So, yeah, we're going to go with an agreement because Justin puts what he would rather have, and that was the 1.5 to 2 acre kill plot. So that's what we're going with.
Yep.
His next question was, would you rather make or eat deer jerky or summer sausage?
That's not even a would you rather. Just say both. Like, don't make us choose for that.
I'm going to say jerky. I just like jerky better than summer sausage, so that's what I say.
I like jerky.
Yeah.
I mean, I like both, obviously, but
we get summer sausage made, and it's really, really good. The jalapeno cheddar.
Oh man, stop it!
But we do make our jerky, so I'm
Yeah.
probably gonna have to go with jerky as far as like making it. It's fun.
Right.
His next one: would you rather hang and age your deer for a few days/weeks before butchering, climate weather permitting, or begin butchering it within 36 hours of being killed, get it packaged and frozen ASAP? Last 4 to 5 years, I've been aging for 3 to 4 weeks in a spare fridge prior to butchering. If possible, I would much rather age the deer. We used to do that some when I was growing up, and it was much better. But in this day and age, holy cow, there's so much going on.
Oh man,
once the kill happens, it's like, let's get this cut up as fast as we can because I don't have enough time to let this. Now, if I'm living at the farm and I've got the ability to let it hang or cure in a fridge or freezer, or even if it's cold enough outside, I'd probably do it.
Growing up, we had an outdoor kind of shed that was really protected, and it was just cool, especially in the late winter when we killed a lot of deer. Man, we'd let them hang. I mean,
stray cats didn't eat too much.
Mama swooped them off the front porch.
Yeah, no. If I had the ability, I'd much rather let them age, but I don't have that kind of time a lot. So, next one: if you only had one boot to wear, this is a good one, all year, would you rather wear a rubber boot or a leather or a synthetic material hunting boot all year long?
Oh gosh, I couldn't imagine, honestly, and I might be spoiled, I guess, but I couldn't imagine wearing the same boot from September 15th to January 15th in the conditions. I know.
Basically, any kind of leather boot, any kind of rubber boot, any kind of synthetic boot.
I would go.
I'm going to put the synthetic probably blended with the leather. I'm picturing like a...
That's what I'd do.
Yeah, because a lot of them are part leather, part synthetic.
And they're much more comfortable on the feet, walking around.
I'm doing that. I mean, there was a day when I would wear rubber boots every single day I went deer hunting, but I also sweated to death about 70% of the time and then froze to death. I think... And that's where you go into scent control. I would much rather, regardless, I want to be comfortable and my back not be killing me. And that's the problem I face when I do wear rubber boots a lot. But if I'm having to stick to one year round, I have to have a boot that can support my back. And I'm going with the leather or synthetic type mix with the Vibram sole. So
I'm going to go rubber boot. I'm going to go rubber.
Give him a few years and his back will hurt him and he'll be coming to the dark side.
Oh, wise one
or
over
get
there.
some gnarly blisters because you're walking for miles.
I'm just thinking,
well,
this question is all year. So we hit the sand hills in Nebraska. Right. You're going to have to wear...
You didn't say this year. I'm saying typically.
Or we we out west and we're going to force him to wear those rubber boots. I mean, come on.
Remember that would you rather? I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, somebody didn't
only
think
wear
it
these
through.
rubber boots.
Yeah, I would go with leather boots. And frankly, anymore during early part of deer season, I wear a light hiking boot because I don't sweat near as much. No, Matt, you wear rubber boots.
No, I don't. No, I don't. I just love that boot too. I love that late season rubber boot with the thick insulation rather than a leather.
To each its own.
But you can get thick insulation leather boots.
You can. I know. I'm well aware, but I'd just rather have that slip-on rubber boot, thick insulated late season.
All right.
That's just me. Would you rather have on your property feral cats or feral hogs, assuming there is a decent number of them?
So you can
There's a left fielder.
You can have 20 feral hogs or 20 feral cats.
I'm going to go hogs.
You'd rather have hogs?
Because they eat really well.
Yeah. The question is, they eat really well. You don't get to eat them. The one's going to eat all your small game, or the other one's going to eat all your food plots.
There's nothing in there that says I can't kill them.
Yeah. Which one's easier to eradicate?
You can't kill cats, man.
I could go out there. You can't be doing that, man. Oh. I would rather have the feral cats than the feral hogs, because the feral hogs are, not only can they eat fawns and be very destructive, but they also eat a lot of your habitat. And the feral cats are really just going to eat your small game. I think I can take care of them and improve situations to make sure they're not as big of a problem.
Well, and honestly, they have a natural predator too. Like a bobcat's gonna try and get a feral cat. A coyote's gonna try and get a feral cat. Whereas a feral hog, it's up to you, and they have an unlit. Like you're not gonna be able to control them just by hunting. So I'm gonna go feral cat as well.
Yeah, I'd rather have feral
cats. I saw
cats.
a hog at Stockton Lake the other day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And my dad saw one running up by our farm in Buffalo.
No
really?
kidding.
Buffalo.
Huh.
Wow. Now we haven't had any on the family farm. Never any pictures, never any sign, but there'll probably come a day. Suppressor thermal will be added on the shopping cart probably soon. Did I say that out loud?
Yeah, you did.
Uh-oh. Somebody, I'll get a trap. Oh gosh, yeah. So feral cats, I'd rather have those than the feral hogs. But either way, it's a problem that I would not want to face.
No thanks.
No thank you.
You ready for old Mark Glenn and his Would You Rather?
Yeah.
Would you rather use a forestry mulcher or a dozer to clear roads and or fire lanes? Does terrain steep inclines affect your decision? And if burning immediately or in the future affect your decision?
I would rather.
I know my answer.
Now that goes into, we can kick this one around for the next 10, 15 minutes. But when it comes to, I'm a landowner and I'm trying to figure out the best use of my money, would I rather buy a dozer or would I rather buy a skid steer and an implement forestry mulcher? I'm going with the forestry mulcher and the skid steer. The dozer can do some wonderful things, but in this day and age, the little skidder with the mulcher can flat do some work. And I think for me, there's a lot more
to clear your roads and fire lanes. That's what you'd rather have?
Yeah, honestly, because the dozer is, if I'm getting into some of them, it's a lot. I've seen a lot of fire lines get built with a dozer and have built some with a dozer. And then I've seen a lot get built with a mulcher and a skid steer, and quicker. And frankly, I would rather have the mulcher. So
I'm probably gonna go with dozer, because you never know what kind of situation you're gonna run into and caliber, size of trees, and the mulcher leaves mulch on the ground. And if it gets wet right afterwards and you're trying to burn, they're going to smolder. If it's a high density of them, could potentially smolder quite a bit, or even if it is dry afterwards, potentially carry flame.
Well, so when you say big trees, though, I wouldn't want to push them over anyway. That's if you're talking big monster trees.
Well, it says
big
to
trees.
Clear roads.
Yeah, I'd still like the forestry mulcher.
I'm with Matt on this one.
Yeah,
I'm going dozer.
All right, have at it. Waste your money.
Hey, you don't have to get angry, man. We're just answering the questions.
It doesn't say you have to buy. It just says, would you rather use?
Would I rather use? I just think I've seen a lot of terrible roads get built with dozers.
That's operator error. That's not equipment, because there's been great roads that have been built with dozers.
Well, with both, too. So I'm sticking to my guns here.
Okay, you can have your opinions.
Opinions are okay here.
Yeah.
This is
So
America.
here's the other part of that. Would you rather? If you bought a farm, what's the first piece of equipment you buy? Tractor, UTV, skid steer.
Out of those, skid steer. If clearing things need to get done.
I'll throw a dozer in there too.
Depends on the condition of the whole farm. What needs to be
done.
That's
the farm. So it's mixed. Let's say it's my family farm. Which one are you guys buying? It's got open ground. It's got brush. It's got some invasive species. It needs roads. It needs food plots. It needs fire lines. Which one do you buy?
I'd say tractor.
You're going with the tractor.
Yeah. A lot. You can use a lot of implements on it. It's pretty versatile.
They do have forestry mulchers now on tractors.
Yeah.
3-point hitch.
You guys have had your chainsaw time. I mean, you're used to running that chainsaw. Just get after with the chainsaw if you need to take anything too big down.
Woo, there's a lot of clearing needs to be done.
For me, I would probably go skid steer still. And here's my thought process on that is because you can clear a lot of open ground. You can take out some invasives. You can put in some great roads. You can put in great fire lines on a lot of slopes that you couldn't get a tractor on. Or frankly, you can put some trails in some very funky places with a skid steer and a mulcher. Now, if you're asking me long-term plans, that's how I would as soon as I buy the farm, I'd buy that. And then once I get everything in place, I'd sell that and get the tractor and the UTV.
Good move.
So that's kind of my thought process on all that.
Right at first, I would agree, and I'd go with a skid steer to get things in place. Here's the thing about tractors. Your neighbor, if you have 4 neighbors, probably have one. If you're in an area that's got land. And, you might be able to rent it for a day or borrow an implement, do the whole neighborly thing. But a skid steer, if I have that option to be able to purchase that and I know the farm needs work initially, I would go with that and then hope that I could borrow a tractor to plant and do the other necessary things. But there's so many implements that are available. We've seen the Veil X on all their line of implements kind of work and run before. Man, that's crazy what you can do with that type of equipment and the massive amounts of clearing. So I think I would go with that skid steer option and lots of attachments.
They're so versatile. That's the thing. You can do so much with them, and that's why I like them so much. Plus, you don't have a lot of, as I mentioned on the last Would You Rather, there's a lot of things, a lot of screw-ups you can make with a dozer, but you're not tearing up as much dirt with the skid steer and forestry mulcher. That's kind of my mindset. I'm trying to get back to the other Would You Rather, so go ahead and jump on with another one.
Would you rather have this is Jesse Wildman, would you rather have a small lot in a great neighborhood or a large property in a bad neighborhood?
With that question, I'm going small lot because I've always said you don't have to own the 400 acres. You just need to own the right 20. And if you're in a good neighborhood, I can do the work and improve it to where I feel like I can assess what's going on in the neighborhood and find the limited resource and put that on my ground. So I'd rather have the great neighbors.
I would agree. I guess up into a certain point of the large property you're talking about. Once you get up to a large property,
would you rather own 20 acres in a good neighborhood or 2,000 in a bad?
Yeah, right? See, but generally speaking, that neighborhood is so important. So important when you're looking at and shopping around for hunting properties. Would you agree?
I'd agree.
Yeah,
I would agree.
Next one from Jesse. Would you rather have a property that borders public land and allows access to free and extra acres, or land surrounded by private? Before we answer that, I will say this is one thing that we really strive to do, and I would say that we do a pretty good job at it, is finding the positive in every situation. I think there's a lot in society in general, we always focus on negatives rather than positives so much of the time. But I think especially with land, there's so many things you can look at that could be negative, but let's focus on the positive. So with this, sure, it looks like a negative that it borders public ground, and I hear that a lot. I hate that it borders public ground. There's going to be so many guys coming over on me. But then the other side of that is you get so many additional acres.
Yeah.
And so I like ground that borders public ground because a lot of times, too, especially here in Missouri, public ground gets managed into where there's some prescribed fire, there's some timber management, there's some native grass planted. They're focused on trying to improve the land for the wildlife just as much as I do, but maybe a little bit less, but probably more than a neighbor that's an absentee landowner that just owns a property and doesn't do anything with it. So I like owning land next to public ground.
I'm totally agreeing with that from the aspect of most times the hunting pressure that's on there, obviously the pressure is only during hunting season. So there's still deer that use that property all season long. And if there's a lot of hunting pressure, where's it going to go? The deer are going to go to you. And if you have your property set up right and it's a secure safety area, you're going to have an influx of deer when you're hunting. That's the way I look at it. And you might have another option to access that public ground that no one else does too. Which gives you two advantages in that situation.
Exactly. I'm going that with the public ground. I've done a lot of scouting this last winter, and I've been pretty impressed with the habitat they have in place. And you have so many more options that you can go in. And you, like you said, you probably have an advantage on a particular area of that public ground that you can get to way easier from your property than you would from having to park 2 miles away. So
yeah,
I'm all about that public ground.
And also, let's look at the negative just on, okay, there's a management hunt that happens on the second week of November. You could look at it and say, well, the second week of November, I'm going to open up my farm, and I'm not even going in there, and I'm going to let the deer search it out as security to where I know the next week when all those hunters are out of there, I could sneak around the edges and have way more deer using my property. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many advantages to having public ground bordering your area. So I'm not opposed to it. Now, given there could be some bad places out there where being next to it isn't as good, but on average, from my experience, it is a good thing. So I would like to have it.
I wouldn't shy away from buying a place that was next to it.
No, not at all.
You guys met AD, right? My dad's buddy AD.
Yeah, that one day.
He owns some property down by the Current River that borders
Summersville.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And he killed a giant 13-point buck, and I believe he killed it on public ground, right next to where his property was.
Interesting. There you go.
They see a lot of deer, man. I mean,
it's a great area.
Yeah.
The next would you rather is from Chad. Would you rather have 650 acres leased with total control over habitat, great supply of resources, but limited funds, or own 530 acres with total control plus great supply of resources and funds? Neighboring property is awesome co-op setting.
Huh. Sounds like he's got something specific in mind.
I know, right? So, Chad, you thinking about buying or leasing?
I'd like the 530 with
No
total
doubt.
control. It's only 120 acres difference.
Yeah.
I'd rather have 530 with total control, great supply of resources and funds.
No doubt. That's an easy no-brainer for me. 530.
Yeah. 120, I can justify the loss of 120 with more toys and more.
More funds to play with the
sure.
toys. Yeah.
That's a lot of land.
Yeah. He asked another one within that. Would you rather hunt over a main trail leading to an ag source or a creek crossing leading to a bedding area?
Well, that depends on the
Ooh.
setting.
Yeah, and the
Time of the
year.
day. Time of
There's
the year.
so many things.
Ooh.
But
Early season, food source, rut, bedding.
yeah,
Late season, food source.
I think. Oh man, just on that though, we're trying to play this game right there with him.
Yeah.
That's okay. Let's play this game right here with him, Chad. I'm sorry. I love you. This is a great question, but I'm gonna get real particular and weasel my way out of this one. He says a main trail leading to an ag good source, or a creek crossing leading to a bedding area. So I'm going to the. He doesn't say anything about food.
Yeah,
so.
he meant food. I'm going with bedding area.
Yeah,
I'd rather hunt that.
You know, when he says leading to a bedding area, I'm assuming that it's a good bedding area that we know is there.
Yeah.
While a food source is, we don't necessarily know that's the preferred food source, especially since it's a large ag field. It could be there's other food in the area, so we don't know that they're going to that one. Let's just hope that the bedding area is more popular. So, I'm right there with you. Creek crossing, too. In my head, I picture a solid one where a lot of deer cross it. It's not just like a small creek that they all just cross at various areas, but good creek crossing.
Bedding area, too, you're almost like, if you know they're bedding in there, you're pretty much like guaranteed you're going to see some deer that night, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like a food source, there could be, like you said, food elsewhere. There could be really nice habitat where they're feeding in the timber or whatever.
You could be a long ways from the bedding area.
Exactly. That's my whole thing. The time of when they show up to that food source can change.
Right at dark, whatever.
You have a square tract of 40 acres of timber in the Midwest, completely surrounded by ag fields. Would you rather focus your habitat improvements on creating cover or creating food plots?
Easy, no-brainer.
Cover.
Yeah. Cover. You got to do something in your neighborhood that no one else is doing. And it sounds like everyone else around that area would be having food, right?
Yeah.
No brainer there. Ooh, Ryan Hesse.
Great neighbors or great access?
Great
Access.
You're going great access?
Because I feel like if I have great access, I have the ability to keep the deer. Now, no idea on the size, but great access to me, you can have good neighbors, bad neighbors, but if you have bad access, it doesn't matter. And if you put them on a priority list, great access is better than great neighbors.
Yeah.
It's what we always preach in a consulting setting is definitely great access. Great neighbor is super, super important, so it's a great question, Ryan. But you've got to be able to be successful in your property, no matter what neighbors do or what they don't do. So
if you're bumping deer, you're not going to have a lot of success.
Yeah, exactly. So great access is definitely paramount there. And I feel like we're semi-live because Dominic, who had one earlier, had just dinged in. That was a minute ago.
Okay.
It's semi-live. He says, would you rather hunt a steady 30-mile-an-hour wind or a slightly swirling 3-mile-an-hour wind?
Oh, wow. Steady 30, buddy.
Give me the 30.
Yeah.
That's a heavy wind, though, too.
Absolutely.
I don't mind it at all.
Yeah.
I can't stand swirly winds. Yeah. Honestly, and Dominic, we talked about it in past podcasts, specifically swirling winds and winds we don't hunt, like miles per hour, we don't hunt under. And typically, we don't want to hunt anything a day or an evening, a morning, whatever it is, under 5 mile an hour. We just, our topography is too changing, and it's going to swirl if it's not strong enough. And if it's under 5, we're probably staying at home, honestly. So 30 all day long.
Yep, I would agree. I can't get to the questions from Facebook Live, but we did have a question on Instagram asking if we would rather do a growing season burn or a non-growing season burn, I guess, was his question.
Dormant season?
Dormant season, that's what he...
Or growing season burn.
I knew that didn't sound right. Dormant season or growing season burn on smooth... Oh, man, I about butchered that. My memory is terrible. Bahia grass, blue stem, old field combination. Would I rather burn during growing season or dormant season? And once again, there's so many things. I mean, if I laid it out and said I want to burn it this time of the year, the next year I'd want to burn, or the next time a burn was cycled out, I'd want to burn it the other time of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But at that, let's say I just get to the property and that's my first setup or my first time to see it, I'm going to try and knock the Bahia grass back.
Mm-hmm.
And so since he didn't say anything about herbicide or chemical, and all my only tool is fire, I'm going to say I want to burn in a dormant season, late dormant season, early growing season. I know I just rode the fence on that.
I was going to say late dormant.
That's basically in that I'm going to try, and basically because of that, that's that late spring, early summer burn to where I'm trying to set the Bahia grass back, knock it back, and let that native grass have a better chance of overtaking. So I would say late dormant season.
Bingo. I'm agreeing right there with you. Let me try and pull up these. In the meantime, honestly, what kind of spurred this was an email that had come in of a would you rather, and that email says, I have 55-acre farm in Kentucky that was purchased in 2017. The farm was a working cattle farm several years ago, so I have closed canopy hardwoods, and I'm also overrun with red cedar in some areas. I've cut a bunch of cedar and have also made travel corridors and bedding, mostly by hinging or falling maples. For summer habitat project, would you rather continue cutting cedar in a couple areas or make additional bedding areas / travel corridors throughout the farm that are not overrun by cedar? And that was Patrick Stewart. Thank you, Patrick, for sending that one in.
Basically, his question is: would you rather cut more bedding areas by cutting cutting maple out, or cut cedars?
Yeah, pretty much.
Basically, I would rather cut cedars.
I would too,
because they're only going to make bedding areas once I cut them.
Yep. And I think that's one aspect of this. He says that I'm taking into consideration for this answer. I purchased it in 2017. And there's still kind of a learning curve that you could have before you go in and start cutting a lot of these travel corridors and bedding. I'd want a really solid year of hunting that farm to realize how deer are using that terrain and current habitat before I go in and really put in permanent, whether it's clear cuts or these travel corridors. I want to take a season and learn that. So I'd be focusing right now on just removing what I know is bad, what I'm going to remove no matter what. And then once I have a year of hunting it, try and use that information to my advantage to then make the bedding areas and travel corridors.
It kind of sounds like he has a lot of cedar thickets.
Mm-hmm.
And it also says he has closed canopy forest. So I imagine he probably doesn't have a whole lot going on for habitat in the timber. And if there's big cedar thickets, he cuts all those down. You're going to get a lot of sunlight to the forest floor in those areas. So, yeah,
no doubt.
Go with that.
No doubt. We just did the Bahia grass one. So going back to
Facebook Live. Let's pull that up here. I would say, okay, here's one for you, Shermer. Would you rather running a chainsaw for a Saturday for 4 hours, would you rather go in and cut out on your farm? Okay. Would you rather go and cut more bedding thickets, those little clear cuts, or would you rather go and cut some do some edge feathering on a food plot, some open and closed edge feathering to try and steer more deer into the food plot closer to your stands?
Right now, as our farm sits, I would definitely cut the more bedding areas.
Yeah.
Just because, like I had said the very first time I've been on the podcast, I kind of described it a little bit. We have a very close canopy forest, and we don't have we don't have very good bedding.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, that's what we've been working on anyways. So I just continue doing that. And we already have cedar thickets that we're working on cutting. And also, we met with our local MDC guy, and we've got some projects in the works.
Lander
Nice.
Jones.
Yeah, because you guys helped,
Awesome.
that idea. Yeah.
Lander
so we're gonna do
Jones,
that
right?
work. I believe it was.
Yeah, that's right.
We were gonna do that work anyway, so now we're just gonna get paid for it.
That's right.
Bingo.
Paid
What were
for
the
it and do it? Use that money and do something else.
Yeah.
What were the projects that you guys kind of outlined?
So we have 2 cedar thickets left, and then we're going to connect the Jake's Field to the horseshoe. And what we're gonna do, so it's kind of gonna be a permanent. That one's gonna be considered a permanent opening.
Okay.
So we're gonna have the 2 fields. There's a trail that goes to them right now,
Mm-hmm.
anyways. And we're not gonna just connect them fully. We're gonna leave some timber on either side of the field, so it's not just like one gigantic. big
perfect.
field.
Yep.
So it's gonna be a field in the
Got
middle.
travel corridors,
Yeah,
basically.
travel corridor. And then so the 2 cedar thickets, that, and then a TSI project as well, just in like the heart of our farm, just a timber stand improvement, taking out hickories, and our farm was logged a while ago, so we have very hickory dominated forest.
Oh yeah,
So,
as most of the Ozarks.
yeah,
Cut the
so-
oaks years ago, left the hickories to
Yep.
replenish. But
so that's the project.
I
we
think
got.
you're off to a great start.
No doubt.
Going with your answer to my question, because for your place, knowing how it is, bedding is one of your biggest limiting factors. So if you did all that edge feathering, you have a chance that's preferred bedding, so they'd be bedding right next. So
That's true.
when you're going to a farm, you want to make those bedding areas more defined and then focus on improving that edge, just because if the best edge habitat and the best cover you have is right at the edge of the food plot, they're going to bed right next to the food plot. So
No bueno.
Jump from every time.
yeah, you got to get a little bit of distance, but we want to shrink it down to where it's not too much distance.
There's that happy medium. So we're back to the Facebook Live questions, and Josh Healy says, if your property is lacking both food and cover and you only had time to do one thing the first year, what is more important? Cover.
Yeah, I think cover for sure, because it sounds like you would have to cut out the food plots and then put those in, while you could just cut it out and get the cover. And probably, judging this is very much an average on the country, but cover is oftentimes one of those things that's very lacking. It lacks across the country for the most part. So
I mean, this is you don't get to have both kind of deal, obviously. So if I know that the deer are bedding on my property, I can provide them cover within that year time frame, I can hunt them more effectively. But if I only have the food, sometimes there's times of the season where they're not getting to food sources till after dark, or just become nocturnal period. So, but if I own the deer, I know that they're on my property and I can hunt them then. And most times, or many times, some of that cover can also be forage too. Like if you're going in and doing these TSI products or some hinge cutting, you can kind of provide both. But I'm going to go with cover as well.
yeah, I would agree. What else you got?
We got
Coming up on an hour, so I don't think there's a whole lot left. But fixed blade or mechanical, Zach? Uh-oh.
I shoot mechanical now. I used to shoot Muzzy. I think you just ought to try it with your bow. To see what shoots the best. I stick with mechanicals, and I've killed deer with both very efficient. It's a bigger cut diameter with the mechanicals though, so that's kind of why I go with that.
Yeah, that's that's just like trying to debate that Chevy's better than Ford or Ford's better than Chevy.
It's a toughie.
Yeah.
You guys all shoot
CWD,
mechanicals, right?
I do shoot mechanicals. Yep. Yeah, we both do.
We
Yep.
both do. I've shot mechanicals for years. I didn't have great experience with fixed blade way back in the day. Looking back, it was because of the setup I had with my bow and what I was pulling, but it just put a bad taste in my mouth. And I've tracked a lot of deer that we never found that were shot with fixed blade, and
I think it goes back to not only your bow setup some, but the way you shoot. Like Adam, you and I, honestly, we have kind of different aim points, or you typically don't hold as tight to the shoulder as I do.
No.
So a 2-inch cut it's not that it's your miss, but where you tend to just
shoot a
shoot
lot
a
of
little
deer in
further
the liver.
back. Yeah.
Because I've had bad experiences with hitting deer in the shoulder and seen a lot of people shoot deer in the shoulder, to where with a mechanical and with the broadheads I've used in the last 5 years and shooting them in the liver and giving them an hour, 2 hours, I have no problem ever finding them.
Yeah.
Like I find them, and it's like, well, they die quickly, and it's very ethical. Now it's not your. Now I will say I shot
we've had
Sticker
'em.
8 in the heart at 40
Yeah.
yards, and he ran 5 yards and was done.
Keeled
But
right
for,
over.
For the
That's
most part,
awesome.
I usually shoot them the back of the lungs and the liver.
And I don't want to seem like, we're not picking on you, but for someone who's listening, like, oh, I shoot them in the liver, like that's not your aim point. But if you were to miss, that's where you specifically want to miss at. That's your miss.
I mean, it is a vital shot. So
It's
yeah,
an
that's a good
extremely
miss.
vital shot. Yeah,
But you do have to let them lay. I've
Yeah.
bumped deer on liver shots. I have done that. So you do
yeah.
need to let them
It's
lay
that
down.
understanding of, okay, what's my next move after I do shoot them there.
But it is
think-
fatal.
I think a lot of the times one of the biggest problems isn't the broadhead, mechanical, or fixed. It's tracking the deer too quickly after the
Boom.
shot.
Absolutely. 100%.
Too many people track
It-
deer too soon. They shoot the deer, they get excited, they think they
Yep.
smoked the deer, they didn't see it fall, but they think in their head that it was a smoke, and they go after him 30 minutes after the shot, and they
Yep.
end up bumping the deer. And it could be a smoke, and you lung shot it, but it could have been more one lung than double lung, and therefore that deer can run a long time
Yeah.
and live a long time or live a while, especially if you bump them. So to me, it doesn't matter if you're shooting fixed blade or mechanical. Make the ethical shot, but give the deer plenty of time.
Yep, that's
Practice,
numero
practice,
uno.
Practice.
Yeah, be confident in whichever one you select, because like you said, you can be successful with both, but when you're making that shot and you're taking that shot, know that you're gonna take that animal. You're gonna harvest it.
You got
That
another-
mindset.
And if you're traveling, look at your state regulations too, because there's some states I believe still that only allow fixed for big game.
I
Or
can't
have they
remember.
changed that?
Maybe I know Colorado. I think used to be just
They
fixed
changed
blade,
it?
but it's changed now. Yes.
Okay.
Matt, what else you got?
That was it.
Okay.
That was it. Yeah.
Well, that's good. We're over an hour. That was a lot of would you rather's.
But
and-
I enjoyed that. That was fun.
Yeah, for sure. I had a lot of fun with it. Zach, Canon or Panasonic?
Well, what are we doing?
We're filming and photography. You got one camera to take.
Ooh. Putting on the spot.
I just got this GH5S and I'm pretty impressed with it. So
Good photos.
very good photos, very good low light. Now it's not a huge megapixel camera. I believe it's only like 12.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly the science, but for some reason the lower the megapixels, the better low light, and for some reason the video quality is better. I don't know what it is, but that camera's pretty sweet.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
So we did. I think we talked to you about it before we recorded, but some gentleman was asking about like filming hunts and doing a podcast on that, and yeah, that was during the live situation, and I think it'd be fun to have like you, Nathaniel, everyone kind of on, get some different thoughts on filming different setups and whatnot. Just kind of get people
Let's do it.
ready for the fall if they want to take on that adventure.
Sounds good. All right. That wraps up this week's podcast. Go to QDMA.com/Land&Legacy to join us on the QDMA modules. Over the next 9 weeks, we're going to cover a wide variety of topics, but it's a really great learning experience. This week's, obviously by now, you've listened, Aging Deer on the Hoof. Also, check out Deer Lab 30-day free trial. If you go to deerlab.com/land and get ready for deer season, that's a great app, not just for categorizing photos, but also learning about your photos, whether it be the deer patterns for wind directions, moon phases, all things great with monitoring deer images. Also, leave us a review, please. We're getting very close with the apparel line. We want this to be perfect when we launch. That's why it's taking a little bit of time to get that going. We have some really cool stuff, really cool artwork coming. So leave us a review, and there's a good chance if we like it, we will send you a hat or shirt when we get this apparel launched. So that should motivate you to hopefully leave a review for us on our Facebook page or leave it on iTunes, Sportsman's Nation, Podcast Network, Whitetail, and then say something about Land and Legacy, please.
Watch it on YouTube.
Watch it on YouTube. Yeah.
That's right.
Check it out on YouTube, especially if we have a podcast devoted to maps and everything visual.
So just watch it anyways.
Watch it anyway.
Listen to the man.
All right, guys. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.
So yeah.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Land and Legacy's Hunting and Habitat Management Podcast. If you like what you hear, check us out at landandlegacy.tv. You can submit a viewer question right there, and we're answering on the podcast, or find us on Facebook and Instagram.
Feels pretty good knowing that from the beginning of time, God has called us to be a caretaker, gamekeeper, a manager of the land. So with that being said, don't you think we should do it all for the love of the land and the glory to God?